Si o to ofa malo mo e lau maare a hou eki ka mo e lere ai kainga tonga hono katoa I he whanuani I Aotearoa. Ko e whaingamalie ko ni te tau ki a ahi ai he ni ki he otu whenenite. And as I mentioned earlier, around 74 people have registered as candidates for the election on the 18th of November. There are 17 seats in the Tonga Parliament for democratically elected members, as well as 9 seats for the nobility. And joining us now via Zoom is Lord Fakafanua, Noble Member of Parliament for Ha'apai number 2, and also the current Speaker of the House. Maloila Maria Fakafanua, and welcome back to PMN Tonga.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be here, Jumbo.
O ia whawhetai pia ko whawhewhia pito e lau maari lele e wheitu ona ke mea mai I he ngalu ea pa mo ngalu ope ke inasi ai hou e ki pa mo kainga tonga hono kotoa I he whonuani. Maybe let's just start off if whanua with a little bit about yourself, your constituency and how you got into politics.
Okay, myself, I come from a long line of politicians in my family, so politics has always been a part of growing up for me. But it wasn't something that I made a conscious decision. Like I didn't wake up one day and decide, oh, I'm going to be a politician. It's sort of just one thing led to another, and then I got into parliament, and then the rest is sort of history. So, yeah. I think, as you know, I'm one of the chiefs here in Tonga, and I'm the noble representative number 2 for Ha'apai. And Ha'apai is one of the islands, the outer islands that we love, and I'm proud to be a representative from Ha'apai for the nobles. Yeah, so.
And also you're the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, I'm the Speaker of the House. This is my 2nd term.
And the youngest
privileged position. The youngest speaker, yeah. So when I got into Parliament, I was the youngest member before 2010, and probably 10 years later now, I'm still the youngest member. So I'm looking forward to seeing some new blood in the House because I'm getting old and we need some new thoughts and new ideas, and that's why the elections are exciting.
Oh, yeah. And we'll share a little bit about some of the youth parliament initiatives that you've been part of a little bit later on in the interview. But let's talk about some of the issues that, you're very passionate about. What are your priorities as a noble as well as an MP, in the Legislative Assembly?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of my priorities is political stability. And something I've always been passionate about was governance and law. But, there are two areas that I'm specifically passionate about right now, and that is renewable energy and youth development. And the reason is because I think cheap and sustainable energy is important for raising standards of living, and also it enables economic growth. And I think a lot of the issues that we have, social issues, unemployment, are due to a lack of economic growth. And then, the youth demographic in Tonga is the largest, and they need more attention today because they're facing growing social issues, economic issues such as youth unemployment, illicit drugs, inhalants, NCDs, the negative influence of social media, on top of identity issues and of course political instability. So previous generations didn't have half of these issues. And so I feel sorry for the next generation because they have so much opportunity, but at the same time, they have a lot going against them right now. And so we need to support them. And, now with illicit drugs, combating illicit drugs, a major priority that His Majesty and the government is looking to work against, those that we want to help, especially those who are influenced by drugs. That's a huge social issue, and it affects everyone in the family, the community, and it's just a big problem right now that we're trying to tackle.
And those are some big issues that, I guess, is that the motivating factor for you to run again and put up your hand to be, one of the, because with Tonga, there's around 30 plus noble titles, but only 9 elected to get into Parliament, eh?
Yes, so in Tongatapu, there are 4 elected from the nobles who run from Tongatapu. The 4th represents Ewa. And then in Hapai, there's about 7 nobles there, and we elect 2 representatives from Hapai. 2 representatives are also elected from the nobles in Vava'u. And then, of course, we have 1 rep from the Niuas.
And let's talk about, I feel koe ni ia mautolo pe ai ho'oeke Nopele. How is that process? How does that work out? Is that on the day as well? And do you have to campaign? You know, because that's just amongst yourselves. Homou fili pe mautolo ia mautolo pe kau ho'oeke Nopele.
So some time before the elections, we have to register your interest if you want to run from your constituency. And then on election day on the 18th, between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, the nobles have their election. So our results, because there's not that many of us, everyone will know the noble election results before the general election results from the people's reps.
And tell me about how does it work? Is it just, you know, do you take turns, you know, with your fellow noble or fellow lords? How does that work?
Oh, you mean getting into parliament?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Is that you know? Is there do you take turns with you know, with all the different titles to go into parliament? Or?
Technically, we take turns, but just like in the general election, there's sort of a caucus meeting of potential candidates, and then they sort of talk it over. And if there are more candidates than there are seats, then it'll come down to the ballot. So that's usually what happens. But fortunately for us in Hapai, we've all decided who our 2 candidates are. And if we all stick to our word, then that's what will happen on the 18th, come the elections. But you never know until the day, because the ballot is secret and we don't know who votes for who. Ideally, we want to know who the members are before we go in, and voting, it just becomes a formality. But you know, people are people.
And mea mai moa ka taki pe whawhanua about the significance. Mahu e ngā koe ni ai reo pe koe Fakafofonga e koe ni ai ho'oeke Nopele. What's the importance or how important, you know, there's the democratically elected members as well as the nobility. How important is having that voice in the Legislative Assembly of Tonga?
Yeah, I like to think of it as we want our society and our culture to be represented inside our parliament. So Tonga is a monarchy. We're a stratified society. We have the nobles and the chiefs, and there's a certain way that we relate together outside of parliament. And there's a social contract between the nobles and the people who live in their constituency. The nobles provide them with land. They provide the nobles with other cultural things. So that needs to be representative in our democracy. So in our parliament, we have our nobles, we have 9 seats for them. And then the majority of the representatives are from the people because they represent the majority of our country. So on a very high level, that's why the nobles need to be there, because the nobles' power base is with the land. And since the nobles give their land for free to the people, they also need to have a voice in parliament. So on a very grand scheme of things, that's why we need to have on a more granular level. Having the nobles there means that there is an element of stability and continuity, and the nobles, being noble, should represent what is best for the whole and not be swayed by political trends and sort of things that might take us away from where Tonga be.
Yeah, go yeah.
If that makes sense.
Go yeah, Aupito. And there's also been over the years, I'm sure, there's been talks of, you know, having the people elect the nobles. Do you think that will ever happen, or are you happy with how the procedures are?
That's a contentious issue, and you know, I would say never say never, but right now I don't think that's recommended, because the nobles, you know, representing the greater good, and they're supposed to advocate for what's best for the country, if they are elected by the people, are no different from the people's representatives who are elected by the people.
Oh, yeah.
Then there will be pandering to the people, going with the popular vote. So we lose that element of check and balance on people who might be motivated for their own personal interests or manipulating the people's. We know from social media now that fake news sticks, and people can be led to think crazy things like, vaccines have microchips in them and government's tracking you. So there's sort of the magnets and all of that. So that's just an example of how people can be misled by social media. And right now, to be honest, people's representatives can mislead people. And we need people that can bring a voice of reason, stability. We need an institution like the nobility that have been here for many generations and have maintained peace, law, and order in Tonga to ensure that that's what we have in the future.
And now looking to the future, you've been very much part of, initiating some projects to help empower our young people and giving them the opportunity. Kenau kau I he Falealea koe ni ai tō utupu. Ka taki pe whakafanua te lava mo ki mea mai whikauaki pe mo ngahi polo kalama koe, ha?
Ako koe po kalama koe ana e magatu o ngai he whiri koe ni waftafitu. Na mahino me he whiri koe, ola koe whiri koe waftafitu. Na over he vai ua tō tupu. Ai koe tau nima ki lalo. Nei kike nau kau nau tau he whiri. Ai mahino nei kike au mai nau leo nau tau ki he whiri koe waftafitu. Ai mau inga pito ki tau whatau ngai koe leo koe ni tō tako tō pe ku tau si, pe ku vai, pe ku koe hape ne ngahi magatu o ngau mau inga pito ke Fakafofonga ine leo I Falealea. Ai koe tonu no koe ni he whiri koe ni me he tautupu waftafitu. Na mau whotu ai e Falealea koe ni tautupu ke hoko peo a mai ke whiri hono hoko. Pena na tau whaingata e whuki tau ko si koe COVID, ka na mau lava pe o ngā wei ai Falealea tautupu o au ki he wike koe kimu'a pa lockdown koe Falealea wike ko osi. Pako hui koe ngahi whangatangata mo ngahi whataptapu. Na e whiri mai pe le rei taha koe mi tonga tapu na whataha ki Falealea. Ka na mau ngā ke teknolosia Zoom ke whakataha mai mo e kau Fakafofonga koe nei whiri mi hapai mo e ua pa mo niua mo vavao. Nei le lei au pito e whonga koe ia. Pea ko tui o ku te mau ngaue a kia ke mau palan ke kau ka whia mau ke ngaue a ki ai teknolosia ke whakataha Falealea mo oni. Ka koe tau mua ai koe ni ai pokama koe Tonga Youth Parliament. Ke whai ai tō tupu, ke nau kau mai ki he whiri hoko. Ke whiri lahi koe ni he Aotearoa November. Pea ua ki ai, whemau ke tau whakaroto lahi ki whanau pa mo tō tupu. Koe uhi koe kaha o ton ke nau whakaukau ki ai, koe nau ngā oe, mo ola nau ngā oe e aunga ki he whanua pa mo nau whamiri. Pefo ke nau koloma nau siasi. E ngahi pokama ke whai ai ki nau tō. Ke oa more noa ia nau taimi ki he ngahi me au ku o nehanga o tamate ki nau tō. Pa mo ngahi mea te nehanga whahe ki nau tō mea mo ui me rino mo hao hao.
Ia. E whawhanua ko lawa I pe ai no e ta taimi ka ko whawhea tu pe ai whaitu ona ka pau kai ha mea ke whemau ke wahe mai ke mea I he kāinga. Tau te whito ki he kāinga ho kāinga, mau whanga mo kāinga haapai o ku nau mea mai ke taki I talanoa pe mo faka'eke'eke koe ni malo.
Koe mako e mea whao si pe ko whi tāmonua ki he whi Falealea o amana ke whahoko. Ki he kau candidate pe he whoke ni I koe ni kau mai ke whiri. Ofa pe ora le tau whiri koe ni Aotearoa. Pe kau pe ni he ririwha politikare whi mau ke tau poupou, tau hipe merino o te tau whangaue a ke tā noloi. Ko hi koe ola koe ni whiri e makatunga me ai ha hoko atu pe ko hariri o pure anga pa mau inga pito ke tau poupou ki ai.
Yeah, and in English, for more be kataki Fakafanua, any final thoughts? And as an MP, as a noble as well, what are you most proud of? Just to wrap up, and any other final message for the Tongan community here in Aotearoa.
I'd have to say I'm really proud of how resilient our parliament has been, and how we've maintained law and order. We've seen some instability in our neighboring democracy islands, and I have to be very proud that Tonga has abided by the rule of law, and we try to maintain stability and respect for each part of our government, at least internally. I don't know about social media because people say a lot of things, but so on that resilient part, when Parliament was destroyed from Tropical Cyclone Gita, I was very proud of how we were able to reestablish and run Parliament within 2 weeks. That shows how resilient our system was. And on a personal note, I'm very proud that I've managed to build a great rapport with all the members, regardless of which political party or affiliation they're with. I think it's good to be able to have honest and open dialogue with your representatives. They are representing people after all. And despite what you might think, it's good to have that open dialogue so that you can flesh out a lot of issues. And on a final note, I'm quite proud to say that the private bills that I advocated and put into Parliament against protecting our children from illicit drugs, some reforms in the House so that the members are more accountable. 4 out of 5 have been assented to and gazetted. So that's
Fantastic.
something I'm really happy about. The 5th law, we're still waiting. It's still in the process. But as a member of Parliament, that's our most fundamental duty, and that is to pass laws that are good for the people in the country. And I'm very happy that the Parliament passed these laws. And now that His Majesty has given his royal assent, that's also good news.
Whafanua whamalo lahi atu lau maari le rei whetuna o ke mea mai he polokalama koeni o ahone. O ate ofa mo tala monu ke he whetu ona ki he teu whiri Falealea o wike kaha o malo au pito.
Malo au pito.
Ho eki mo ha matapure te tau ki I le pasi I he ka tau tok foki mai. You're listening to PMN Tonga.